G'day, I am Derek Fildebrandt, publisher of the Western Standard. Today is January 20th, 2021. I'm here today from the Western Standard's studios at our Calgary office, downtown Calgary. I'm joined in the studio today by Corey Morgan, our podcast editor and columnist extraordinaire. G'day, Corey.
Hey.
And joining us from an undisclosed location in Calgary is Dave Naylor, or Rico Suave. Nice shirt, Dave.
Thanks, Derek. I got it for Christmas.
Well, today there's a lot going on. We've been we're going to get into, but before that, I just want to remind everyone that if you're not yet a member of the Western Standard, please go to westernstandardonline.com and go to the membership section and sign up to support bailout-free, independent Western media. We are having an incredible time right now. We've had about 1.3 million readers this month already. We are on track to have our first 2 million reader month. And if we can hit those kinds of numbers, we will very proudly be able to say that at that point that we are either the second or the first most read media outlet in Western Canada. Online. It would be incredible for us to say that. I really want to say that we're bigger than everybody in Western Canada by readership online. Really just a brag. I just want to be able to go home and tell my wife that, be able to tell our advertisers that. It would certainly help us out. So if you're not yet a member, please go online to the westernstandardonline.com and sign up there. And if you are a member, thank you very much. You kick ass. So we're going to dive into it. Today, we're going to be talking about the curious move by Erin O'Toole to purge Derek Sloan from the Federal Conservative Party's caucus. There's a lot of really funny business going on there, and Conservative MPs are voting on that right now. It's happening today, that vote. And we've got some insider information about what is expected to happen, what's kind of the, what are our little birds telling us? We've got a lot of people talking. Today as well, just a little over an hour ago, Joe Biden was sworn in as President of the United States. We're going to talk about that. Try to keep it civil if we can. It'd be nice. And of course, some really interesting news coming out of Manitoba. The Manitoba government has said officially that the lockdown and restrictions do not apply to its government employees if they're at work. The lockdown does not apply to the government. It just applies to everybody in Manitoba. Very interesting stuff. So we're going to jump straight into it. We're going to start with the big story we've been following out of Ottawa. Erin O'Toole has demanded that Alex Sloan be expelled from the Conservative caucus. They're going to vote on that today. They may be doing it as we speak. Let's go to Dave Naylor to give us the lowdown on what's been happening on that.
Derek, this has been a very fast-moving story since Saturday afternoon, and you're right. The Tory caucus is voting on this matter right now. They're in a virtual huddle on the COVID pandemic regulations. They can't meet in person, but they're huddling together online. Likely go for several hours. This all started back on Saturday when Party Leader Erin O'Toole issued a statement on Twitter or Facebook, I guess, basically saying there's no room in the party for people on the far right. Came out very strongly, said there's no room, and this was his party, his way or the highway. So the very next day he came out with it was revealed that Derek Sloan, a contender for the leadership, finished fourth place, that O'Toole won. Derek Sloan had apparently accepted a bribe from a well-known neo-Nazi. That well-known gentleman was called Paul Frum.
Sorry, did you say bribe or donation? You said bribe.
Did I say bribe? Donation.
I think that's $131 towards a campaign. I'm not going to call that.
No, I've been watching too much U.S. politics this morning. So he accepted this donation.
You need to silence everything beeping end.
Yes, I keep signing out and it keeps signing me back in. Anyways, the donation came to light. Erin O'Toole moved quickly and said he was going to take the issue to the whole of the Tory caucus with the move of trying to kick Derek Sloan out. Sloan replied, hey, that's not very fair. And in fact, the party itself had taken a cut of its donation, 10% cut of the donation, when they processed it. So since then, there's been a lot of behind the scenes movement on the O'Toole move. Our sources, Derek, say it has really split the Tory caucus, and that the vote today could go either way. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens. It's going to be interesting to see if the vote does fail, what happens to O'Toole's leadership. It's going to be interesting to see the split that's in the caucus. Our sources say that the Quebec caucus will vote en masse to kick Sloan out. Some in the West are apparently not happy with the move. And of course, Ontario MPs, Ontario, as we all know, has got the best organized socially conservative movements in the country. So it's going to be a day of great intrigue ahead for us.
Yeah, this has been a very fascinating story. And when this came out, the media just more or less repeated what Aaron O'Toole had said, and just said, oh, well, he accepted this donation, therefore Alex Sloan is practically a Nazi. I smelt a rat. Now, full disclosure, I'm not an Derek Sloan fan, despite his name. He's not my cup of tea. I think there are plenty of very reasonable social conservatives out there. I don't think he's necessarily one of them. I do not share some of his views, but who cares if I don't share some of his views? If you're going to kick him out over his views, have the stones to say you're kicking him out over his views. Instead, they've trumped this up. And so let's go through a few things here. It's really just not adding up. It very clearly, I think, is an orchestrated per O'Toole. First, this donation came from a guy named Paul Fromm. First question is, who the hell is Paul Fromm? I never heard of him. I'm sure 99% of people in Canada had never heard of him. I'm willing to take a bet. I'll give anyone 3-1 odds that Aaron O'Toole had never heard of Paul Fromm until this came to his attention. This guy is a has-been neo-Nazi from the 70s. He just gets up, he likes to get up and play dress-up stormtrooper or something and do his best impression of a Nuremberg rally. The guy's a joke. No one cares about him, and he's been largely out of the news for decades. No one knows who he is. 2, I don't think you can expect that Derek Sloan's campaign could have known who he is. First of all, the check was not written in his name. It was written under a variation of his name, under Frederick P. Fromm. If you don't know who Paul Fromm is, you certainly don't know who Frederick P. Fromm is. It's not a name that rings a bell to me. It's not a particularly sinister sounding name. His name's not Adolf Fromm. You would know. Third, this kind of stuff is handled by your chief financial officer, not by a candidate. Someone who's been in politics, I can tell you, I did not know if someone was giving me less than $1,000 or maybe $500. If someone my wife would have given me a $131 donation, and I wouldn't have known about it unless it was signed by Sierra Leone Blood Diamond Corporation. I wouldn't have paid any attention to it. Fourth, the Conservative Party of Canada didn't catch it either. They accepted their 10% cut of that donation, and they issued him a membership card. They issued him a membership card, and that is done by the Conservative Party of Canada. Fifth, this only came out. This came out through press progress. All signs are pointing to they were tipped off by someone in the, let's just call it the upper hierarchy of the Conservative Party's leadership. None of this makes any sense. It's very clearly an attempt to use this as a gotcha moment. Aaron O'Toole has said that there's no room for any error here, that there's no tolerance whatsoever for any oversight or lack of due diligence. This sets a bizarrely high bar in the future now for Aaron O'Toole. Actually, not just the future, the past, because we're talking about the past. So if any odious character, if some racist kook somewhere has sent a check to Aaron O'Toole's leadership campaign at some point, or has sent a check to the Conservative Party of Canada at some point while he was leader, then Aaron O'Toole needs to step down as the leader and as a member of the Conservative caucus. He has set an impossibly ridiculous standard that no reasonable person would expect someone to be held to. So it's pretty clear what we've seen here. We're going to come around this in a few angles. Before we get to we're going to talk about how Conservative members are handling this. We're going to talk about how the Conservative caucus is handling this, what this means for Erin O'Toole's leadership. But first, I want to pass it to Corey. I want your sense of, you know how I feel, but does this seem like, is this reasonable to begin with as cause to dismiss someone from the caucus to begin with? And second, do you think Press Progress just found this because they like to comb through $131 donations to people, or was this something a bit more sinister from within the Conservative Party?
Well, that's speculation, but I mean, the bottom line is the response to it is stupid. That's the only word that describes it, is stupid. It's destructive, divisive. I mean, this vote that's going on in the caucus right now, what a turd to throw into the punch bowl. I mean, to have them now struggling and fighting with each other on who's going to vote which way, this was completely unnecessary. And as you said, if there was going to be a need to get rid of Sloan for some reason, then come out and do it. If there's something going on behind closed doors we aren't seeing that he's doing, get on with it and explain it. But this weak sauce of some past donation, the only person who's happy is Paul Fromm, because now the tens of neo-Nazis and white supremacists that are in Canada can find this obscure leader to rally around, because it's really nothing for real. The only people who would know, though, who he is are the extreme left, such as Press Progress, actually. So it is conceivable that they were scouring through and somehow, because they're the more obsessed with white supremacists than anybody else are, would recognize somehow how Frederick P. Fromm is this individual from the past who, again, held some tiny little segment of extremists behind him. But it's bizarre, you know, the words that come out with this. Like, why? Conservatives just so insistent on shooting themselves in the feet. This is an election year. You need to be rallying your support, and you've just divided it pointlessly over nothing. And as you said, this has now set a standard and a bomb that can blow up on any candidate across the country.
It could blow up on Erin O'Toole. I guarantee you, some asshole who has views we do not want to be associated with has donated to Erin O'Toole or to the party under his leadership at some point. I guarantee you there is one asshole in there somewhere. And by this standard, as soon as we find out who that is, Erin O'Toole is gone not just as a leader, but as a member of the Conservative caucus. But, you know, surely leaders always hold themselves to the same standard as they hold their underlings.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just, I can't make sense of this one. And it'll be interesting to see what caucus comes up with coming out of this. But no matter which way they vote when they come out of it, there's a whole bunch of division in their caucus now that wasn't there 10 days ago. And there was just absolutely no reason to tear into this like this. It was ridiculous.
Yeah, we're seeing right now a huge backlash by the members, including many members or general Conservative supporters who did not support Derek Sloan. Remember, he got 13%, if I'm not mistaken, of the popular vote in the Conservative leadership race. Not an insignificant also ran. You know, remember, there was a move to get rid of Derek Sloan at the time. He had made some comments about Theresa Tam that were controversial. And some of the mostly Peter MacKay wing of the caucus, people who were supporting Peter MacKay during the leadership race, they tried to get rid of him. And Erin O'Toole came out and proudly said, I will vote against kicking Derek Sloan out. You know, social conservatives are welcomed in our party. And what has Derek Sloan done since that's controversial? Well, just this rounding error donation that constitutes about 0.01% of the money that his campaign brought in.
I think he'd had 18,000 donations.
18,000 donations, $1.3 million. This is a rounding error. So he hasn't done anything wrong here. He hasn't done anything wrong since Erin O'Toole said he should not be kicked out. But there's been a huge backlash from the members, many more than just supported him. I don't support him. I didn't support any of the four. I'm not a member. I didn't see fit to support any of them. I'm not a Tory. There was no Libertarian candidate in the race. There was no Western candidate in the race. So I had no horse in that race. But I smell a rat here. I'm not a fan of the Conservative Party in many ways, but I am a fan of some basic fairness and due process for everybody from the lowest citizen to our elected officials. And what we're seeing here is, I think, pretty clearly an attempt to purge. Leaders do not like people in their caucus who have their own independent power base. And speaking of that, let's turn back to what the cause of this is. Dave, we've had some pretty good sources tell us about how this is all kind of wrapped up in the Conservative convention coming up, delegates going to it. Why don't you tell us about that?
Yeah, this whole neo-Nazi thing just may be a diversion, Derek. What our sources are telling us is that the top bigwigs of the Tory party, this would be the people behind the scenes, even above O'Toole, they're worried that Sloan was making a move with Campaign Life, pro-life organization, Campaign Life Coalition, to stack delegate slates for the Conservative convention. It's going to be a virtual convention held in March. Each riding would get a certain number of delegates that would represent them at the convention. And the concern amongst the party was that Sloan, along with the Campaign Life people, were working together and trying to get their own pro-life delegates onto various slates. And you know what? The Tory party is exactly right. We talked to the head of Campaign Life last night, and he admitted, it says, yeah, we are trying to stack the delegates, but you know what? It's not this massive operation that the Tories may be perceiving. It's not hundreds of operatives working the phones in the stealth of night. It's just one phone call at a time. And that's how they're trying to do it. And even they admit the COVID pandemic is harming their recruitment attempts. But the whole thing is, and they're worried, Derek, that if Sloan and Campaign Life get enough of their delegates, then they can control the convention. They can vote on party policy. They can elect a national council that will all be in favor of their social conservative lifestyles and movements, and they will have their support, and they basically take over the party. So that may be the big issue behind the scenes.
So I think O'Toole thought he had a lot more political capital to play with than he really did here, and he's obviously pissed off a lot of their members. And I think this is going to have a big backlash for the convention. First of all, so I think their hope here was to by politically defenestrating Sloan, that this would somehow cut the head off the dragon and the social conservatives would go away. Well, even if they do manage to get through expelling him from the caucus today, I don't think they're going away. In fact, I think they're particularly angry now. I think they see themselves as the target of a purge of at least their leadership and representatives in the party. I was talking to someone who's running for the Conservative National Council yesterday, and they were a little bit worried about social conservatives coming in and backing their candidates before. Now they're terrified because they think these social conservatives, they're now just not going to come out in bigger numbers. They're going to be more motivated. They're going to be more militant, and they are going to be voting against people running for national council who are backing Aaron O'Toole. They want blood. They want his head now. O'Toole's trying to take the head of their guy. Well, now they want O'Toole's head. So now O'Toole is very possibly going to be influencing with this backlash the elections for the party's national council. And you could see a number of people get on that council who maybe aren't openly calling for his head, but are behind the scenes not likely to do him any favors. Well, anyway, the Conservatives are voting on this today, the Conservative caucus. As you said, Dave, it is a virtual vote. They're not meeting in person, but they called an emergency meeting for this. Why don't you tell us what it is we know is happening from, well, at least our sources are telling us behind the scenes, what's happening and how this is likely to play out today?
Well, our sources say there's a split in the caucus, and it's too close to call. It could go either way. Obviously, if it goes against O'Toole, that's a massive, massive defeat for him. How he'll save face from that, nobody's quite sure. If he does lose, the one saving grace, maybe the fact that Prime Minister Trudeau could call a snap election at any time. So I'm not sure the Conservatives would want to be getting into a leadership convention when they could be facing an election. The other key thing to keep in mind today, Derek, is that it takes a majority of Tory MPs to vote him out. So if you get a couple of MPs who abstain, say, those are really technically votes that go in Sloan's column, because it's total number of MPs, not the total number of votes cast. So there's going to be arguments back and forth all day. Source we talked to last night said the prosecution, for lack of a better word, may bring up things that O'Toole is alleged to have done, like fundraising in other MPs' ridings, and they may bring up his actions, what he's trying to do to the March convention. So I don't expect this to be over much before the late afternoon, early evening hours, Derek.
Yeah, all we can do is speculate and right now about how this is going to go down. We've got sources telling us it's very close. I can tell you it would be extraordinary for a leader to lose a vote like this. In most cases, leaders just decide themselves, you're gone. There's not a vote. Or what they do is they kick them out and then they ratify the vote afterwards and say, okay, I may have broken the law, but please retroactively make it legal. That happens in caucuses all the time. Leaders generally just decide this on their own. I know the old Wild Rose Party had in their constitution that it was by caucus vote, but that didn't really matter anyway. But federally, it's different. There is a law called the Reform Act brought in by Michael Chong. It was a very thoughtful. It got really watered down. The leaders and all. It was kind of funny. Most of the MPs supported it, but the leaders were all against it. And so, in negotiating with the leaders, they watered it down. What it does, though, is it allows the caucuses after each election to decide if they're going to adopt a set of rules in it or not. The Liberals decided not to. The Conservatives decided they were going to adopt it. Generally, a party's only going to adopt it if they don't have a full-time permanent leader or something, or if a leader is in trouble. Anyway, these rules require that there is a vote to kick them out. Otherwise, without this law in place, I think there's 100% certainty Sloan would have just been kicked out summarily with no due process whatsoever. But it would be extraordinary for a leader to lose a vote like this, especially after he has made it so public. I guess, there's three scenarios. One is he gets what he wants and there's only a few dissenting votes. Two is he gets what he wants, but it's very close. And three, he loses. The first scenario is not very interesting, and I don't think that's likely to happen. I think there's going to be a significant number of dissenting votes here. I'm not sure how close. We're probably going to find out because the Conservative caucus chair, Tom Kamish, a Calgary MP, MP for Calgary Shepherd, has said he's going to publicly release the vote total. And I think this is going to be a proxy for support in caucus for O'Toole right now. Are you going to back the leader or not? He's made it a referendum about himself. And, we're hearing, and, we can't confirm this yet, but I know this is a common practice. On stuff like this, the leader says, this is essentially a confidence vote. If you don't vote as I tell you to on this issue, I will take it as a vote of non-confidence in me. And that's, kind of an extreme measure, but if he really needs to get something done. And at this point, O'Toole's political future demands that he gets this done. So I'll put it to you, Corey. If this vote, maybe give me your thoughts on the two more interesting scenarios. If the vote is close and it passes, or if it actually fails to pass, what do you think that means for the party and for O'Toole?
Well, the funny thing is, it doesn't matter anymore. The division's there. I mean, he's created it, and it's not going away. If 100% of them voted to oust Sloan, they'll know that these guys were just whipped into line. If it's close, well, then it shows a giant amount of division that's visible. If it goes the other way, then it might as well be a confidence vote against O'Toole because his caucus doesn't support his actions. Again, it was just absurdly stupid to put himself into this situation and put the rest of the members into it. And now to have alienated the social conservative element of the party. As you said, it's 13, 15%. But they're an important one, and here's that secret.
That's the percentage that voted for him.
Yes.
Leslyn Lewis was also a social conservative candidate, and she won first place by popular vote. She just didn't win overall.
And there are others. There's very socially conservative EDA presidents. I mean, you see, people always wondered why in conservative politics, I'll let out a secret here, why do they cater so much to what seems like a smaller element of it? Well, because social conservatives, that part of the party, are the active ones. They're the door knockers. They're the ones who show up for EDA meetings. These are the ones who do the $10 donations, but they do it with thousands of people. They're important, hardworking ground supporters of conservative parties, and they do get pushed aside all the time. That's what happens is they take advantage of them for the campaign, and then they kind of, okay, we'll toss you a little bone over here that'll die in a vote on the floor, and then we'll just we'll tap you again in the next election. Well, we got an election coming up this year, and they've just ticked off that whole element of the party, which is not wise. I'm just flabbergasted by how foolish this move was. I don't know what prompted it.
Dave, I know you're a newsman, but I'm going to ask you to put on your pundit hat here for a second. If O'Toole fails to expel Sloan in today's vote, I don't know how likely that is or not to happen, but it's certainly not looking like the slam dunk he expected this to be. But in your view, if O'Toole fails in this vote, do you think that could portend the end of his leadership, that he'll essentially be forced to resign at that point? How does a guy continue to lead a party with half of his caucus supporting someone he has decried in public as essentially being a Nazi? I mean, that means by implication that half your caucus are Nazis by the bizarre standard that you've set. If O'Toole loses, do you think he can continue as leader?
I think a lot of it's going to depend, Derek, on the vote itself. As Corey mentioned, if he gets a couple of dozen votes supporting Sloan, then that caucus is fractured, and O'Toole loses all credibility because he staked his reputation on getting rid of Sloan. And he may have, if he succeeds, but it's a close vote, then he almost loses that way, doesn't he? Because his caucus is so divided and there is such a rift. I personally don't see how he's got the credibility to continue. As one party source told us last night, he said, quote, "It was an idiotic move by O'Toole," end quote. And he used the word idiotic. And it looks like it certainly is. There's a lot of easier ways to get rid of a problem in your caucus. You don't have to do it this way. Bottom line is, unless it's 100 to none, 100% to none, he's going to lose credibility.
Well, I think he gets the vote for himself, so he'll get one vote at least. But I can tell you right now, the counts on these numbers are going to be very difficult to determine because it's a secret ballot. If this was not a secret ballot, Aaron O'Toole will get his way. People don't oppose their leader if they have a good sense of political self-preservation, let me tell you. But it's a secret ballot. And I'm telling you, right now, Sloan is counting votes, and O'Toole and the Whip are counting votes. And I'll tell you, let's say 50 were saying they're going to vote for Sloan, and 50 say they're telling O'Toole they're going to vote for them. Half of them are lying. So whatever vote counts they have, they're wrong. Both of them are going to have less votes probably than they know they have. Sloan perhaps actually, maybe his will be a little more accurate because people might be willing to support him but aren't going to tell him because they don't want to be seen as opposing the leader. But this is going to be hard to tell. I bet it's going to be a nail biter for both Sloan and for O'Toole, regardless of what the actual vote comes down to, because whatever their vote counting is telling them about how the caucus is going to vote, half of what they're being told is a lie, I guarantee you. Well, let's move on to... no, I can't say if it's more sane or less sane. I don't know. The world's messed up. We're going to move on to what's happening to the south of us today. This show is not... We're not obsessed with American politics. That's not our focus. We're not even obsessed with Ottawa politics unless it's affecting the West or of real interest to the West. But it's impossible to ignore today. Joe Biden sworn in as president of the United States. I know a lot of our viewers here and a lot of our listeners are not Joe Biden fans. I'm not a Joe Biden fan as well. But, if you're going to be commenting, you're very welcome to. But try not to use expletives. Joe Biden is president now. And you might not like it. I don't like it, but it's a fact, and it's something that needs to be accepted. You can call someone on their policies, you can call someone on what they do, but he's president, and it's there. There's no more conspiracy theories out there that say that Donald Trump is going to somehow remain president. He is no longer president. He's probably playing golf somewhere right now, having a better time than he ever did as president. So let's kick it to Dave about what happened with today's inauguration and what we can expect today.
Well, Joe Biden is now the president of the United States. So all those people who were writing me nasty letters a month ago when I called him the president-elect, I told you so. He sworn in an outdoor ceremony in front of the Capitol, attended by actually not very many people because of the COVID lockdown and the security measures. Lady Gaga sang a beautiful rendition of the American national anthem. Garth Brooks ironed his jeans and sang. And Biden took the oath on a Bible that must have been 1.5 feet tall. I'd love to know the backstory on that. So I'm gonna.
Well, you should see the Bible I was sworn in on as a Wild Rose MLA. I have a giant German family Bible. It is like that tall. It looks like it was written by Moses in stone. So Joe Biden's Bible's got nothing on mine. Mine's like a cinder block.
Yeah, so when we
well, it's cheaper to truck.
Sorry, go ahead, Dave.
When we came on the air, Biden was set to visit the Arlington National Cemetery, and then I think later on this afternoon he was off to the Oval Office for the first time. He's been in there many times as vice president, obviously with President Obama. One of the things he did with President Obama was sign a executive order killing the Keystone Pipeline. Of course, Trump turned that around, and 4 years ago he gave a permit for it. And today, President Joe Biden will go in there and reverse Trump's order and kill the Keystone Pipeline yet again. Seeing the writing on the wall, the TC Energy people, the operator of the pipeline and the proponent of the $8 billion U.S. expansion, put out a release saying they were immediately halting work. They're going to sit back and lick their wounds, so to speak. They lamented the lack of, or the loss of thousands and thousands of jobs, most of them union workers, which is ironic because most unions tend to support Joe Biden. So,
Dave, so did I mishear you? I know Joe Biden is expected to kill Keystone today on his first day in office. That news came out a few days ago. Did you say that he already has signed that executive order to kill it?
No, that's on his agenda. That's on his agenda to do this afternoon. But TC Energy has come out and killed the project themselves this morning. They've suspended
they've stopped construction on it. They haven't canceled it, but they've stopped construction.
They've suspended work.
And
thrown it all out. So, and obviously this has huge repercussions for Alberta politically. Jason Kenney invested $1.5 billion of taxpayers' money into TC Energy, along with another $6 billion worth of loan guarantees. And Kenney did all this even though Biden had been saying for years that he was going to kill Keystone. So Kenny's got a lot of questions to answer. He's also got a press conference scheduled for later Wednesday afternoon. So we'll see what he's got to say. He's going to hire lawyers, put some lawyers to work, charging taxpayers money on that too, to try and fight it. So, and I'm sure Prime Minister Trudeau is hard at work already, also trying to save the pipeline. He admitted, or he said yesterday, hey, you know what? I made a call to Biden in November, and he sort of threw up his arms and said, what more do you want me to do? So, yeah, for the time being, and at least for the next 4 years, doesn't look like Keystone will be getting off the ground.
See, this is why we need an Alberta army. We could invade.
There we go.
We're building this pipeline.
Yeah, we'll dig the hole ourselves.
Fascinating stuff. There's a couple of dimensions to this. I think the big thing is obviously Keystone. Remember, we're not a U.S. politics show. I'm not interested. I'm a little bit interested, but it's not really what we're going to deal with here in terms of the ins and outs of the election. Do you think there was fraud or not? That's beyond the scope of our program. I really am not an expert in it. Corey's not. Dave's not. If you want to get into that stuff, watch an American show here. We're talking about how actions from governments at home, in other parts of Canada, and a part around the world, like in the United States, how they affect the West. And so we're going to talk primarily about how Joe Biden's presidency is likely to affect the West. Obviously, the big thing is Keystone XL. Obviously, our national carbon tax, which is set to go to $170 a ton, a 500% increase above what we were, or 470 or something above what we were told it would be, has clearly not bought social license from even a Democrat like Joe Biden, and he's supposed to be theoretically a moderate Democrat. Joe Biden is not. He's not a radical socialist Democrat like AOC or Bernie Sanders. he's a corporatist. He's an establishment Democrat. He's been a politician longer than I've been alive, maybe even longer than you. I don't know how old you are. I'm not going to ask, but probably about as long as you've been alive. Dave, you were probably in kindergarten when he got first elected. This guy has been a politician forever. He's an establishment Democrat. He likes being in power, and he'll do left-wing things when his base require him to do left-wing things. He'll do maybe center-right things if he thinks it's going to get him votes. It's going to get him support in Congress. But clearly, this is a promise he made during the U.S. primaries to shore up his left flank against the threat from Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders, and he's going to make good on it. I was hoping, politicians lie about a lot of things. I was hoping he was lying about that. There's a lot of times I hope politicians are lying because when they say they're going to do stupid things, I hope it's a lie and that they don't do it. Corey, how strongly do you think we can expect Justin Trudeau to go to the mat in fighting for this pipeline right now?
Not at all. If this was a priority for him, he already would have been speaking up. He would have been front and center. This isn't something you can sit in the back seat and wait on. I mean, the thing is, I think, though, well, for one, I don't think Trudeau really cares that much. Let's be blunt about it. It's not a priority for him either. I mean, he has to go through the motions of being supportive, but it doesn't follow his ideological agenda. He's more than happy in the back of his mind to see Keystone die. As Dave said, he made his phone call in November. Well, I tried, and he can shrug it off. We had secretly hoped that Joe was just going through the motions, sort of like, talking about pandering social conservatives. We'll do that, but then when the time comes, oh, you know what? It's just not feasible. We tried a little court challenge, and it has to go through. That didn't happen. If he's putting that on his day one priority, this is not something he's going to back down from. I mean, that means he's setting up his presidency based on this. This isn't 6 months in. This is day one. You're not going to convince him otherwise then. So Jason Kenney's talking about court challenges because he's got a pile of egg on his face because he invested a bunch of tax dollars into this. He won't. There's no court order can stop a presidential executive order. It doesn't. You can't win that in the courts.
Oh no, you can't.
But,
no. That's not that's not the case. Trump had some executive orders shot down in the courts as unconstitutional, and that is where our hope lies here because this was permitted. They went ahead,
and we can see compensation coming out of this.
Well, so either one of two things is going to happen: the pipeline is going to get built, or the courts are going to order that the federal government is going to have to pay a obscene amount of money to Keystone XL and its investors, like Alberta taxpayers, to compensate them because governments are not allowed to cancel projects in the middle of it unless they compensate you. And he's not just canceling; he's saying the pipelines that would be torn out of the ground. It would be obscenely expensive. So it is possible the courts will let him. It's possible the courts will say, no, this was approved. You can't stop it. Or they might say, if you shouldn't stop it, but if you're going to have to pony up God knows how many tens of billions of dollars in compensation. So I think there is still hope in the courts. Remember, John Horgan said he was going to cancel the Trans Mountain Pipeline. He knew he couldn't do it. He just said it to say, to kind of keep the Green vote from going to, too many votes from going over to the Greens. He just wanted to shore up that far left Green eco vote. He knew it wasn't going to go anywhere. He knew that the courts would side against the province. And so once the courts beat him, he exhausted it. He was able to look to his base and say, hey guys, I tried. Sorry, I can't do anything about it. So maybe we'll see the same thing here.
We'll see. But again, I don't think Biden's expecting that, or he wouldn't put it on day one because that's just something he's going to be wearing right away. It would be something you want to put your priorities somewhere else if you think it's going to be shot down later on. And again, I think maybe a compensation thing I could see more. Well, you can shut it down, but you're going to have to pay out these investors. But the other thing is, as I said, TC Energy has halted their construction for now, and that you can't stop a project like that on a dime. Like that's a heavy duty change. That's thousands of people immediately put out of work. That's the gears stop turning. The other thing is, how long do we wait? A year in court, 2 years in court. Meanwhile, we're investors. I mean, who's going to put money into that? You'd be insane. Yeah. I think if it tells us anything, it's let's start getting our pipes to the coast. Let's get energy east because the Americans are not a stable customer right now. We're in great trouble from this.
And the reason Justin Trudeau supports Keystone on paper is because it doesn't go through any other provinces. It's just Alberta. It only affects Alberta and Saskatchewan, where there's almost universal support for pipelines. I think the pipeline itself, I don't even think directly goes through Saskatchewan. Saskatchewan links up to it, but this pipeline doesn't.
This one cuts the corner just down by East End, but
Okay.
yeah.
But it's essentially mostly just Alberta. Because it doesn't anger BC, it doesn't anger Ontario, it doesn't anger Quebec or the Manitoba. Excuse me. Oh my goodness. Pardon me.
Yes.
Sorry. I ate some very stinky German cheese before I came on the air. I made Corey smell it. I think it burnt his nostrils.
It did again now.
And
you wonder why I don't want to come into the office.
It's more dangerous than COVID, I'll tell you. Woo! We're gonna have to get Edelweiss Village Calgary advertising with us. That was free advertising for their stinky cheeses. Sorry, that was quite a digression. So it'll end up in the courts. The big thing now is also what the hell's going to happen in Alberta here. I mean, Jason Kenney, similar to me, his early career was at the Canadian Taxpayers Federation in Alberta, and he made a name for himself fighting against the Alberta government, getting directly involved in buying, investing in businesses. It once in a while works out, but more often than not, it's a complete and total disaster because governments can never make investment decisions as well as people whose money it actually is. Government doesn't really have skin in the game. And, so we had Novotel, we had all these big disasters under the Getty government. Klein sold them all and said, we're getting government out of the business of business, period. And that's been steadily eroding over the years. It began with Stelmach and it continued all the way through Redford, Prentice, Notley, and Kenny's been in it too. And then he has made one of the biggest direct government investment decisions in Canadian history, certainly on a provincial level. He put $1.5 billion Canadian in buying direct investment stakes in Keystone XL's pipeline and another $6 billion in loan guarantees. Now, this does not make me anti-Keystone Pipeline. This makes me anti-corporate crony capitalism. Makes me anti-corporatist. This is a hugely important pipeline. It is absolutely critical for Alberta, for the West, even for Canada. But that doesn't mean I think the government should be bailing it out. I like cars. I hope Ontario builds cars, but I don't want the government owning car companies. It's same with airplanes. I'm happy for Quebec to build airplanes, but I don't want to be paying for them to build airplanes. And at the same thing, if we're going to be consistent in our views, if you oppose the Ottawa bailing out Bombardier, if you oppose Ottawa bailing out GM, then you have to oppose Alberta bailing out Keystone. And I love Keystone. And these problems are not actually Keystone's faults because this is all political. Their problems are not economic. The economic case is clear. These are political factors influencing it. But Jason Kenney has made a massive investment decision here on behalf of Alberta taxpayers. All in, $7.5 billion are on the table, and we could see that evaporate before our eyes. And if that happens, cancellation of Keystone is not then just an economic catastrophe for Alberta. It is now a government finance catastrophe. It is now a catastrophe for taxpayers. How much egg do you think Kenny's going to have on his face here? If, as we expect, Joe Biden cancels this, we'll go to you, Dave. Then I want your side of this, Corey. What does this mean for Jason Kenney? Is he going to have to really wear this, or is he going to be able to shrug his shoulders and blame this one on Trudeau too?
No, it's just the latest kick in the groin for Kenney. Coming on the heels of the Snowbird scandal. To me, Derek, the thing about this, how could you not see this coming? Kenney obviously put all his eggs into the Trump re-election basket, and he lost. He took a gamble and he lost. Joe Biden has been saying for years and years that he's going to kill Keystone. When he was vice president, he killed Keystone. When he started the Democratic primaries, what was that, in 1643? It seems like it was so long ago. He said he was going to kill Keystone. In the Democratic debates, he said he was going to kill Keystone. And then everybody acts surprised when he goes ahead and kills Keystone. I mean, and if you're in charge of Alberta taxpayers' money and you hand over $1.5 billion in readies to TC Energy and another $6 billion in loan guarantees after Biden has made all these statements, then You wear it. The egg is on your face, and another major scandal that Kenny's going to have to overcome.
Yeah, if this goes down, I think it will probably qualify as the single most expensive government boondoggle in Canadian history, as certainly in Alberta history. If it doesn't beat federal, it certainly would beat any other province, including much larger provinces than Alberta. Corey, what do you think the political fallout would be if this happens and we have just dropped $7.5 billion into a lemon?
Well, it's just piling on, and everything Jason's touching is turned into crap. I mean,
well, that should be the title of your new book.
Well, there we go. I mean, and you know, I was supportive of Kenny, and I still would hope that somehow he figures out. But it's just a disaster everywhere you look. The energy center that's supposed to defend these things, maybe you should have gave them $1.5 billion to promote Alberta down south. They couldn't have done any worse than flushing it down the toilet on this pipe.
The $30 million they spent on that, I don't think has gone
Which
too
is
well
another
either.
thing I know. And the coal mine disaster, the parks disaster, the travel gate disaster, it just doesn't seem to stop, and it just keeps piling on. And now you've got libertarian fiscal conservatives like us who are, bloody pissed off. I mean, come on. In the 90s, Jason Kenney was leading the Taxpayers Federation against Klein, talking about MagCan, Novotel, as you mentioned, Swan Hills, Gainers. Like, I'm of the age, I remember all of those. And government investment is a kiss of death. Every one of those things was money flushed right down the toilet. It makes me worry about TMX probably is going to die as well, just due to the curse of once you get the government involved, it's done. So, yeah, we're ticked off, and Kenny's going to be wearing this, and he's in such a hole to try and recover from in the next 2 years. It's just one more thing that he's got to try and win back, and I don't know how he's going to.
Well, I think as they get more politically desperate, when they're facing numbers in the mid-20s like they are right now, looking at an absolute devastating election coming up, if they can't start pulling these up, my worry is that he's going to get more politically desperate, take more of these reckless gambles. I mean, $7.5 billion for, I can't say what I was going to say, something's sake. Like, that is an incredible amount of money. Look, you kind of made me think of something here. If you want to make me dislike something, fund it with the government. At one point at least, I had a Keystone XL hat. Like, I am one of these pipeline worshipers. I admit it. I'm definitely a petro patriot. I love this stuff. But as soon as the government starts owning Keystone, I said, I don't like government businesses. Keystone is a little better than a Crown Corporation now. Trans Mountain, it is a Crown Corporation. I don't like Crown Corporations. I want Crown Corporations to fail. So, I mean, what an absolute total disaster this has been. I mean, this is the month from hell, I think, for this government. But the big losers here are going to be taxpayers. How are you going to look Albertans in the face and say, hey, guys, I went to the casino, I put $7.5 billion on red, and we came up blue. Sorry. I mean, how are they going to explain that away? And yes, Justin Trudeau is responsible for a lot of our problems. But he is not responsible for the decision to invest $7.5 billion of taxpayers' money into this. $1.5 billion in buying stocks and another $6 billion in loan guarantees. That was not Justin Trudeau's decision. That was the decision of the Energy Minister, Sonia Savage, and the Premier of Alberta, Jason Kenney. Those are the two people who are responsible. You can't even blame most of the rest of the legislature because they didn't even vote on it. This was not approved by taxpayers. I'm sure they'll put it into a budget retroactively later.
Oh, I can't imagine how that budget's going to look.
Oh, good God. I mean, there is no words to explain how much of a disaster this is. I just want to know how the Premier is going to be able to look Albertans in the eyes and say, I'm sorry, I just lost $7.5 billion because I didn't think there was any chance that Joe Biden would become president. I'm sorry. That is the dumbest gamble I've seen. I wouldn't bet $20 on that. The only way I would bet $7.5 billion on that is if it was somebody else's money. And that's what happens when governments make bets with other people's money. End rant, because I am just about to blow a friggin' lid. I've had it with this. There's just, I said I'm going to end the rant. I'm going to end the rant. Well, let's talk about more stupidity from governments close to home here in the West. Manitoba, wow, they really let the mask slip on this one, no pun intended. Dave, why don't you tell us how we're all in this together in Manitoba?
Well, I'm scared to, Derek. You may go on another rant after this. Yeah, this is just another example of one rule for one and another rule for others. That came about after media in Winnipeg noted that gyms in government buildings, in City of Winnipeg buildings, were remaining open, and city employees were allowed to go in and work out. This despite a pandemic, health closure for the rest of gyms across the province, very similar to what's happening in Alberta and across the West. So the question was posed to Dr. Brent Roussine. I hope I'm pronouncing his name right. He's the Chief Medical Officer of Health for Manitoba. And I'll just read you his quote, Derek. He says, quote, "Our public health orders don't apply to any levels of government." Let me just repeat that. Our public health...
Say that again. That's just too good. That needs to be on a billboard.
Our public health orders don't apply to any levels of government, says Dr. Brent Roussine, the Chief Medical Officer of Health for Manitoba. The quote continues, "So they don't apply to federal, provincial, or municipal governments. All three levels of governments, they're okay. They can do whatever they want." His quote continues, "So I am aware of health inspectors having visited some of these gyms and found them safe," he says, referring to government gyms. They were not given an exemption outside the order, meaning they could just do whatever they want. The closure orders don't affect them because they're government. So obviously this has upset the regular gym owners in Manitoba, who quite rightly are questioning, hey, well, why is it good for one and not good for the other? Yeah, really, really silly thing to say, and it's certainly making the rounds on social media again, and just the government arrogance. It's just like the snowbirds, right? UCP snowbirds jetting off to sun and sand destination, while the rest of us saps sit in our houses alone, locked down. It's one rule for the government, one rule for the rest of us, Derek.
Incredible. Dave, as soon as we are done the broadcast here today, I want you to dig in and see if we are finding that in the other Western provinces, in BC, in Alberta, in Saskatchewan. I want to see if this, lockdown and restrictions for thee but not for me stuff is applicable in our corners, other corners of the West here. Absolutely incredible. I've ranted too much. And I'm too angry. I'm having an angry day. I'm having a good day, but I'm angry right now. Corey, say something.
I'm always angry anyways. That's just my natural state.
That's just your default setting. Just you do it.
If anything's going to kill all the lockdowns, though, and lose the moral ground, nothing destroys it faster than hypocrisy. And we see it from haircuts to travel to now gyms. These governments living high on the hog whilst we're suffering and sacrificing down below, and it's going to crumble. So they better hope the bloody vaccine works, because the let them eat cake attitude is going to get an uprising, and very soon.
Well, the vaccine may work, Corey, but we're not getting it. This is another thing that Kenny's going to have to deal with, is there's no Pfizer vaccines coming this week. So we're sitting around with a lot of nurses with empty needles.
This is one area where I think Kenny can legitimately point the finger at the feds. The vaccine procurement is one of the very few areas of federal government jurisdiction within healthcare, and they've shit the bed on it. Like Big Pharma, I don't like Big Pharma. I don't know many people who like Big Pharma, but guess what? During a pandemic, when you need them to come up with a vaccine, is a bad friggin' time to pick a fight with Big Pharma. They're not as my wife said to me this morning as we were talking about this over breakfast, they're not the hero we deserve, but they're the hero we need right now. Big Pharma is what's going to pull this out of the fire and with vaccines, so that we can get back to normal life. Because I oppose lockdowns, and a lot of these mandatory measures, but I still want the vaccine. I want a vaccine to get rid of this, because this is a big problem. and we're not going to have life back to normal until we've got I don't know what percentage of the population is necessary, but certainly enough to achieve herd immunity with a vaccine here. So it has been fumbled. It's now a shortage in all the provinces, and one area where the provinces, Alberta's been pretty decent though, has actually been in vaccine distribution, getting it out, getting it stuck in people's arms. They've actually done a pretty good job of that, but they're out of it now. They can't do it because they don't have enough stock. But we'll just bring it back to Manitoba to close off. Absolutely wild that these kinds of laws that are imposed on everybody else are not imposed on governments, that they have special privileges because they are governments. So Dave, you've got a task ahead of yourself here. See if you can track this down. If so, we're going to have the story for you here at the Western Standard. We'll probably be back with another special edition of the Pipeline. But what a time we're in. So much happening. So much stupidity by people who we would like to be smart in positions of power. But that's the way it is. Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Corey, for joining today. Thank you, everyone else at the Standard right now. We've got other people in the office here. Thank everyone on our team for making this possible. Thank you, especially to our members who are supporting us. We cannot do this without you. If you are not yet a member of the Western Standard, go to westernstandardonline.com. Click on membership. It's right at the top under our masthead of the Western Standard there. Become a member. $10 a month. You can support bailout-free, independent media that is here for Western Canada, standing up for your interests and keeping an eye on things. I'm so proud of what we've been able to do in just a little over a year in operation. We've really turned a corner here. We're now we're going to do the official numbers, but I think in December we were either the number one or at the least the number 2 most read online news platform in Alberta, and across Western Canada we were either number 2 or number 3. This month we're headed for our first 2 million reader month. So everything you see from the Western Standard, share it, get it out there. We want the bragging rights. I want to be able to tell people when I'm trying to sign up advertisers for the Western Standard that we have 2 million readers a month and we have the most read news site in Western Canada. That's something that's bragging rights I sincerely want right now. I can't speak today. I haven't even had anything to drink. I should probably have something to drink. It'll calm me down, or it'll make me fighty. I don't know. Depends on the day. Well, thank you all very much for joining me today, joining Corey and Dave. It's been a wonderful time. You've been a wonderful audience. Thanks for your questions and comments. God bless.